Welcome to City Corner, an ongoing program where we talk with council and city staff about what's happening in our city. I'm Hollie Logan, and today we have brought onto the show Public Works Director Pete Rogalsky to talk about council's direction to fully fund the Duportail Bridge and needed pavement preservation projects. Welcome, Pete.
Thanks, Holly. Good to be here.
Great. First off, so let's talk about this being a two-step process. Council will consider establishing a transportation benefit district to qualify for funding sources, and then council will then consider initiating the funding source. So let's start there. What is a transportation benefit district?
A transportation benefit district is a government vehicle that was created by the legislature quite a few years ago that allows local governments in various combinations. Sometimes it's multiple cities together. It could be a county and a city. It's a rather flexible tool, but it allows local governments to form an area-specific district to dedicate, generally to dedicate money to solve a transportation problem.
Okay. And this has been something that's been available for several years, am I correct?
Yes, quite a few.
Okay. And what is the city proposing for this district?
So the city is considering, or the city council will consider, a proposal to establish a district for the entire city limits. So the whole city would be affected, and the purpose would be to help it complete the Duportail Bridge, something we've been working at for quite a while and have prioritized very high, and to help boost our ability to resurface streets more timely.
Right, and that's obviously been top of mind for our citizens, is the, preserving our current infrastructure as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so what are the authorized purposes for a transportation benefit district, or a TBD as we'll call it?
Yeah, generally it's to construct or maintain transportation infrastructure. So there's quite a bit of flexibility in that too. It could be roads, it could be bike trails, it can be transit facilities, and because it's a statewide tool, each community that considers it can sort of designate what it's for. In our case, it's pretty narrowly defined. We have two purposes. It's to fill the funding that's needed for the Duportail Bridge, and to supplement the money that's available to resurface streets.
Okay.
We're not planning on doing anything else other than that with it.
Okay, so we'll set those parameters around those. Okay, so TBD fund sources include vehicle registration fees, some property tax and impact fees, and council is looking towards, and staff, to pursue the vehicle registration fees. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the most common funding vehicle that communities use here. I think probably because it's directly tied to a transportation purpose, and so things like property tax or sales tax aren't immediately relevant to transportation, and it sort of carries this flavor of general taxation that's sort of not directed or not controlled or managed, whereas a car registration fee is clearly tied to the use or to the ownership of something that uses streets, and therefore it makes sense that funding can contribute to streets.
Okay, so essentially a car tab fee. How much money would be raised by the car tab fee?
So we have estimates from the state about how many vehicles are licensed to residents in Richland that would be subject to the fee, and it's a 40-some thousand vehicles. That translates with a $20 fee to about $850,000 each year.
Okay, and is there a sunset clause or an end date?
Yeah, at this point the intention is that when the Duportail Bridge, the city will sell revenue bonds based on that fee revenue to help build the bridge, and when the bonds are paid off, then the fee would sunset.
Okay, great. Will these fees need to be shared with other state or local jurisdictions?
No, and that's part of the beauty of it. There's a lot of for instance, property tax, sales tax, and even gas tax for that you pay at the gas pump, all of those are distributed into various entities all over the state, and again, there isn't a clear either control or direction of those funds to our purpose, whereas the car license fee will be paid by vehicles registered in Richland, and the money minus a very small administrative fee that the state handles for handling the money, all that money will come directly to the city of Richland and be managed as a discrete fund or a discrete program.
How much local funding is needed to complete the Duportail Bridge? Where are we at right now with our budget?
We think it's about $4 million.
Okay.
So the whole project is $38 million, and I think as a lot of people are aware, but we're very aware, the state legislature dedicated $20 million to us a couple of years ago in their package. Through various other sources, we've been able to chip away at that delta between 38 and 20, and we've just arrived at the final number that we need about $4 million in bonds to build the bridge.
Okay, so this could be a really good option to fill that funding gap.
Yes.
Okay, great. Has the city exhausted all other opportunities to secure funding for the bridge? Any other grants?
Yes, pretty much. I mean, for the last number of years, the federal government has had a program called Tiger that has some visibility where they fund things. We've applied multiple times to that, had the support of our congressional delegation and lots of people in the community to those applications, and we just haven't been able to secure one because it's very competitive. Generally, they're receiving applications for, I think, between 20 and 100 times as much money as they actually have to give out. So it's not. So that program we've tried, we really haven't been able to succeed. We don't think we have a good chance of succeeding again, and so we think we've pretty well exhausted the opportunities to have third-party money pay for it.
Sure, and in reality, there just isn't additional funding out there on the federal and state level aside from some of these grant opportunities, and like you said, the requests far exceed what they actually have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And secondarily, all of them generally look for a funding mix that includes some local money. So
Sure.
that the dream of having the entire thing paid for by somebody else and not having to stand up some local money is just that. It's kind of a pipe dream.
Sure.
Any of these, if we continued to chase Tiger Grant, for instance, the feds would want to see that the city had some skin in the game. And so
Sure.
we can't continue to pursue a funding model that has no money from the city.
Okay. So how will the monies be collected essentially, and how will it be used to pay for the bridge and then on to the pavement preservation component?
Yeah, so it'll be collected through the annual notice you get from the Department of Licensing that it's time to renew your tabs. So it'll just be a component of that bill, and there won't be a separate transaction, but that's where the money will start from that end. It'll flow through the state and get delivered back to the city. I think there'll be a monthly distribution of that money coming back from the state, similar to other shared revenue streams that the city has with the state. And then we'll do two things with it. We're planning on in 2019 we'll sell bonds so that we can get loan proceeds is essentially what it would be, from the bonds to help build the bridge. And then from that point forward, a fraction of that $850,000 will be paid back as debt service or loan payments against those bonds until they're paid off. And that fraction is several $100,000, on the order of $300,000. And that leaves $500,000 and change to go to the pavement preservation program on an annual basis. So that money every year would be available to continue paving more streets and doing more resurfacing. We still haven't hired a contractor, and we don't know what the exact number is, but that's a pretty good estimate based on several years of estimating and an engineering company that's very tuned into this type of construction.
Okay. So why are we pursuing this district now?
So in order to enter a contract with a construction contractor around the end of 2017, we have to line up all the different funding sources. And so several of them involve agreements with state agencies. And in order to sign those agreements, they need to know the whole package, and the city's share is available to that, to the whole program. So putting the district in place now, the district itself comes with a sort of an administrative startup process that takes 6 or 8 months.
Okay.
So putting the district in place now and planning to collect the money, and then being able to go to the state agencies in the middle of 2017 and say, here's our program, we need to launch at the end of the year, the city's money will be available, now we're asking for your money. That's kind of how it all comes together. So this is quite timely. Waiting a little bit longer basically would make it, we wouldn't be able to secure the state money to then advance to construction.
Sure, and then eventually get under contract with the the construction contractor. We would need that as well.
Yeah, the beauty, part of the benefit that we're seeing in some of the state sources of money is that they're willing to spend their money up front. And so when I mentioned before about not needing to sell bonds in 2019, that's part of the flexibility that the state agencies are providing to us, is we can wait and see how the numbers fall out, but we still have to secure or guarantee to them at the front end that our money will be available.
Okay. And regardless of how much we eventually use towards the Duportail Bridge project, if it does change a little bit based on the actual numbers, we are still able to move those funds to the pavement preservation program.
Yeah, the packages that set of revenue will support both of those priorities.
Okay.
And frankly, if we can accomplish the Duportail Bridge with less money and then have more to support the ongoing pavement preservation, residents will see that that's to our benefit to set it up that way and to do it that way.
So what is the timeline for the completion of the bridge?
We hope that we'll be finished in the summer of 2020.
Okay.
And so we've built a schedule around hiring a contractor at the end of 2017, and then then building a bridge across a river has some complexity to it, including some environmental constraints about when you can work in the river. And so we built this schedule that has us finishing in 2020.
Okay, and we've completed a lot of the preliminary projects leading up to the bridge that contribute to the entire corridor. Can you speak to some of those phases that have been completed?
Yeah, so we had 3 separate projects. That extension of Stevens Drive south from Lee Boulevard to Wellesian was a new route we did a couple years ago. This past year we completed 2 sections on Duportail Street, both rebuilding an existing section and extending a new section down the hill from Wellesian up to Thayer. And so all those contribute to this new sort of corridor or linkage that the bridge will be the sort of the linchpin or the final element of.
Over to South Richland, to the Queensgate area.
Yeah.
And so aside from a bridge, we picture just kind of crossing over, but there are other elements to the bridge that will be added as well, including a water line. Am I correct with that? Yep. Okay.
And so, yeah, there's lots of things, components. There's some new street segments and connections between SR 240 and the river that will be built to make the neighborhood connectivity work better once the bridge is in place. There's lots of utility work. There's undergrounding of power lines and cable, and there's very important water pipeline work that will contribute to improved security and redundancy and reliability of supply, hopefully all of which is invisible to us for many, many years. We won't have the crisis that these things will protect against. But
especially as we see continued growth in that area.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, another benefit is the response with our emergency personnel and really helping bridge that gap, so to speak, into downtown Richland and making their response times even better.
Absolutely, yep.
Okay,
yeah.
Great. So have other agencies within the state of Washington taken advantage of this funding source?
Yes, I mean, to my
Okay.
knowledge, there's about 90 thus far that have formed transportation benefit districts, and not all of them are using the car registration fee, but many of them are. And so it's becoming a more common, as you noted before we started. Just a year ago, there were only 75, and now
Right.
there's 90, and so communities across the state are coming up against challenges to construct what they need, either for growth or for these just system preservation, and they're now looking to use that tool that the state legislature provided them. You know, we do get money from the state every year in the form of some portion of the gas tax, but it just doesn't keep up, and so most communities, and us included, are looking for other sources.
Okay, great. So as the council is considering the formation and then funding of this district, when would these fees begin to be collected? What's the goal?
The plan, if council if council votes to implement the whole thing, the plan would be that we would begin collecting fees in January 2018.
Great. So our thanks to Pete Rogalsky for talking to us about these vital transportation projects. If you want more information, visit the city's website at ci.richland.wa.us. Thanks for watching this edition of City Corner. I'm Hollie Logan, and I'll see you next time.